Okay, so let me share my screen with you and then minimize that so it's out of the way. Great. Well, welcome everybody to this short webinar. Well, short, around about 40 minutes or so, I expect to take about identifying your ideal customer. I've run this webinar, well, run this session normally face-to-face for the Guildford Hub a few times. Normally when I do it face-to-face, we do some little breakout exercises. And whilst we could do breakout rooms on Zoom, it just felt a bit too difficult, too awkward, because I couldn't interact with every breakout room as it was going on. So we're just going to go through the mechanics of the identifying your customer process, and we'll talk about how we might work together afterwards at the end if you want to take it further. Your perfect customer is out there. They are sitting there, whether it's in a coffee shop or at home or in the office or whatever. And what they're really waiting for is that perfect message or that perfect piece of content or that great offer that you're going to send them to get their interest. And you need to really come up with that compelling message so that you actually spark them into action, to actually engage with you and buy from you. But really the biggest mistake people make in marketing is they don't think through who their target market really is, and they craft all of these messages without really thinking about who they're talking to. So we're going to look at all aspects of that today. If you have any questions, by the way, please do feel free to come off mute and ask a question as we go through. I'll also take questions at the end, but if you keep yourself on mute other than for asking questions, that will help the recording. So what kind of messages are you going to create, and what sort of stuff are you going to get out there? It may be that you already think you know your customers and what you're doing, but this might be a good refresher for you. But also remember that during the pandemic, your customers' behavior has changed, almost certainly. But for example, we don't all gather together like this. Yeah, we're only just being able to get back to talking to people, and then you've got to be socially distant, all that sort of stuff. So behaviors have changed. So it's still very useful for you to actually have a refresh and a rethink about your customer behaviors. You know, it used to be that a lot of people didn't use LinkedIn very much, but the use of LinkedIn, for example, has grown hugely over the course of the pandemic. Whereas Facebook, the use of Facebook has changed. It's become much more of a family connection tool, and finding business on Facebook has become more difficult. So people's behaviours have changed during the coronavirus pandemic period, so you really do need to think through how your customers behave. So you've got that perfect customer, you know that they're out there. So what's the message that you're going to send them? You know, what is it you're going to say to them to actually spark their interest? Why is that message so compelling? What is it about your message that's going to spark an interaction? How are you going to compile that or create that really interesting message? How are you going to pique their interest? And how are you going to get it to them? This is where, you know, we often find that people in small businesses in particular get it wrong, because what they do is they start by thinking about delivering the message. So they think about, well, I should be on Facebook or I should be on Instagram or whatever. So I've got to get out there. I've got to get on Instagram. Or they think, well, I'm just going to send an email. Or they think, well, maybe a bit of snail mail, but, you know, let's get something through letterboxes or whatever. Or maybe they're thinking, well, people are searching for me on Google AdWords. So they're already starting to think about that delivery mechanism, of how they're going to get the message out there. And you know, that's really where Marketing 101 comes in, because you know, when you're thinking about the media first, and then you think, okay, I know I want to put it out on Facebook now. I know Facebook has to be chatty, so the message type, I've got to really craft the message to fit with the media that I'm going to put it out, and it's got to be chatty and what have you. But in reality, this is all the wrong way round. let's think about it from the perspective of an example. So let's think about Mary, who's a weight loss coach, right? So she helps people lose weight. Now, obviously, Mary can have a huge market. Basically, anyone that needs to lose weight could be Mary's customer. So, you know, when I first put this, I haven't done the stats, updated the stats, and I suspect this number is significantly higher now. But when I first wrote this session quite a while ago, it was around 64% of UK adults were overweight. So that's a huge market for Mary. So she must be really raking it in, because, you know, she's got this huge market to draw down on, and it's really good for her. But the problem is that actually, although 64% of UK adults are overweight, that's not her market, because probably 80% of those 64% of adults don't really care. Or if they don't care, they're in denial or don't realise that they're overweight. You know, lots of people don't focus on their weight. It's only a much smaller percentage that really want to lose weight. So a real market is just 12.8% of UK adults. But even that is not really a target market that she can go after, because it's going to be a huge range of different people in that target market. For example, and this is why you need to get specific, the message she's going to give to middle-aged men like me that have got the lockdown lump at the front there, where we've eaten too much chocolate and drunk too much beer or whatever during lockdown. The message to appeal to somebody like me to get me to lose weight is going to be very, very different to the message she's going to need to use to attract perhaps a new mum who wants to get back her pre-pregnancy figure. You know, the message is just going to not, the same message is just not going to appeal to those two different parts of the market. So she's got to really niche down. Now, the first time I ever ran this session, I had one of the members of the hub came up to me and said, at the end of the session, came up to me and said, I really wanted to come along today because my marketing's not really been working. I've not been getting leads from my marketing. And I thought it might be because I hadn't really understood my customer avatar properly. So I thought I'd come along and I could hone my avatar. But what I've realized now is actually I don't have one customer avatar. I have 7 customer avatars. So I've got to go away and rewrite my marketing so that I target each of those customer avatars separately to get the right message to the right person. And some of those avatars might be on different platforms, different media. And that's what you've got to really work out for your business. How many avatars do you really have? Are they on different platforms? How do you get the messages to them? That's why you really, really need to get specific. So really, if you understand the market, you don't start with the media and then create the message for your market. You've really got to understand the market first so that you can create the right message for that market. And if you really understand the market, you know how you need to craft that message because you'll understand what media that market uses. So it's really, really important that you start at the top and work down rather than, as most small businesses do, think, oh, I've got to be on Facebook. Let's bung stuff out on Facebook. I've got to be on Instagram. Let's get some stuff out on Instagram. Think about your market first. Understand what messages are going to resonate with them. Then identify from that where they are and put it out on the right media in the right tone. And that will make for successful marketing copy. That will make for successful marketing campaigns. And that's what we're talking about today, really getting to understand your market so that you can get the right message on the right media to the right people. That's what this is all about today. Now, I always use this example. And many of you will remember Sir Terry Wogan, who passed away on the 31st of January in 2016. He's a legendary presenter, not just on radio, but also on TV and what have you. And so Terry had 2 spells of running the BBC Radio 2 breakfast show, and often had audiences of up to 9 million people. Now, when he passed away, the BBC went into eulogy overdrive, but one particular eulogy really resonated with me, and it was by Paul Gambaccini. And Paul Gambaccini asked Sir Terry, when you're broadcasting to that many people, somebody Could somebody go on, somebody on mute there? Could you go on mute, please, for the recording? Brilliant, thank you. Yes, so Paul Gambaccini was talking to Terry and said, you know, you often broadcast to this sort of huge number of listeners. How do you picture yourself broadcasting? How can you broadcast to so many people at once? And so Terry's answer was really, really powerful, because he said that he doesn't broadcast to those number of people. He actually thinks of himself as broadcasting to just one. He imagines one person sat opposite him across from the microphone, and he's having a conversation with them. And that's what your marketing needs to be. Each piece of marketing needs to be a conversation with that one person you are targeting, that one niche that's depicted by that one target customer. And what this session is about is helping you identifying those targets, so that when you're writing your marketing copy, you can have that one-to-one conversation, because it's much more powerful and you're much more likely to get a conversion if you're having that as a one-to-one conversation, as if you're trying to shout out in the middle of a crowded square, come buy me, come buy me. It's just not going to work. You need one-to-one conversations. That's what we're going to try and achieve for you today. Now, one thing you mustn't do is think about money. Money is not a niche. Yeah. Quite often people think, well, I want to market to the people that can afford me. So that's wrong. Don't target prospects that can afford you. Yeah, you do need people to spend money with you, so they've got to have some money. But if you get the right prospects, then they'll spend the money with you, and those prospects are the ones that can't afford not to have you. Yeah, so they're the prospects, for example, that have got an absolutely rubbish website that's not bringing in any customers, or is not getting anyone to actually buy from it because they're going to it and thinking, oh God, it's taken ages to load and move on, whatever. It's about finding those people that say, well, this isn't working for me. I need a web designer to help me create a website that I really can get customers to buy from. They can't afford not to have you because they need your services. It's a must for their business. Yeah, you've got to find those prospects that can't afford not to have you, because if they can't afford not to have you, they will find the money to actually spend with you to get the job done properly, so that they can actually grow their business. Yeah, and you'd be surprised how, you know, if you've got a really painful tooth, and the only way is to go and have that tooth root canal filled and a crown put on it. It doesn't take long for that pain to really get to you before you decide you will find the money to go and spend at the dentist to get that tooth drilled out and a cap created. Yes, you might choose the cheapest possible crown that you can have put on it, but you will find the money somewhere, because that pain will drive you mad. That's what you want to find in your clients. You want to find those clients who's got that pain that's really driving them mad, and you've got to create that compelling message to say, I can take that pain away from you. And you can only do that if you really understand those clients, really understand the pain that you're going to solve for them, the problem that you're going to remove for them. And that's the way you find your target message market and give it the right message. So the objective is, there's your potential market out there, loads of people out there in the market. You really want to find that one person in that market that's ready to buy from you. And it's only by getting the right understanding of who they are and targeting them with that right message that you will be able to do that. And there is a process that we can go through called the customer avatar process that will enable you to identify those people. Now, we're going to go through a whole series of steps, and in some of these steps you'll think, why do I have to go through that level of detail? Well, the answer is because you can't have a conversation with people if you've got nothing in common, if you don't understand their perspective. And the more you know about them, the better you'll understand their perspective, and therefore the better you'll write marketing messages. So you know, quite a lot of people, when they think about it, look at the customer avatar process, they say, oh, that won't work for me. I can't see how, knowing thinking about what car they might drive, or what TV programs they might watch. I can't see how that's important. Yeah, they're being judgmental about the process. You need to be curious about the process and think through how this is working. Put yourself in the recipient's shoes and think about what gets marketed to you, and then think about what the company that's marketing to you has done to think about how to appeal to you, and it might start then to make some sense. So first step in the avatar process is to decide which product or service you are marketing, because depending on that product or service, you will have different messages. You really do need to think through and create one avatar for one product, because choice is the enemy of decision making. If you give people, if you line things up and say, well, there's 3 choices here, you make it more difficult for your person to buy from you. Whereas if you say, this is the product that's going to solve your problem, and then the decision is, do you want your problem solved or not? And if you've done your job well, you've explained why your product will solve the problem, you've answered all their objections, it's then a simple case of, do I want to solve the problem or not? They buy it or they don't buy. But if you say, well, I could solve it this way, or I could solve it that way, or I could solve it this way, you're starting to create this dilemma in their mind. Well, which one's going to be the best for me? I don't know. Yeah, focus on one product or service at a time. So you really do need to break it down to that level. Now, even within that product, as we saw with Mary, the weight loss coach, she's probably got one product helping people lose weight, probably the same product or service that she's going to deliver to the same people, but she needs to niche it down because her market has different attributes. So if you could solve multiple niches, you need to break it down so that you get really, really focused and targeted. She might run different weight loss groups for returning mums or young mums. She might run a different group for the overweight fatties like me. There might be different groups. They might use the same techniques and have the same advice, but different groups and different marketing messages. So you really do have to niche down. And it's really, really important. Then we're going to get into how do you niche down. So you've got to start by outlining your avatar. You need to create this high level personal view of that perfect customer. And this is where you start asking all those awkward questions that lots of people say, well, I don't understand the relevance of that. Things like, what do they look like? Where do they live? What sort of a family do they have? Are they married or single, male or female? What sort of job do they have? What car do they drive? What sports do they play or watch? What other pastimes do they have? Where do they go on holiday? All these sorts of things. Then it could be many, many more characteristics depending on your target market. But what you're trying to do is really get inside the psyche of these people, because depending on the answer to some of these questions might determine where you actually put your marketing messages out there. You know, if you're targeting mums of school-aged children, and they're all going to be meeting outside the school gates, assuming we've gone back after COVID, you know, your best method of getting to them might be to stand outside the school gates with leaflets, handing out leaflets about what you do. Or it might be putting a message in the school magazine or on the school notice board. It might be sponsoring an event at the school. If you don't get into and understand the detail of your customer in real detail, you can't really get to understand where they're going to be seeing your messages, what platforms they might be using. Yeah. So it's really, really important that you create this as detailed as possible understanding of your avatar. And then you need to bring your avatar to life. What do I mean by that? I mean, find a photo. Conversations are far easier when you can see somebody. Yeah, that's why lots of people have Zoom calls rather than phone calls, because it's really nice to see a face. You get to see people's reactions. And if you've got a photo of somebody, they seem much more real than if you've just got this written description of them. So don't, really, I can't emphasize enough that that is really, really important. Find a photograph of your ideal client. Use Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, newspaper, magazines, anything you like to come up with some photographs of your target market. Here's an image I picked for one of my target markets when I was writing training courses for project managers. And this was an HR executive responsible for training, was looking for project management courses to help train project managers in their company. This is another avatar I created for the individual training, online training courses I was creating. And this was typical target project manager, young project team member who wants to take the next step up to start to become a project manager. But if in taking these pictures of my ideal target market and putting them with my avatar description, brought them much more to life. You could even use an existing client's photo. If you have a perfect customer at the moment, you could use the photo, go onto their LinkedIn profile, nick the photo off there, whatever it takes to actually bring that avatar to life, that makes it more personal, makes it more like a one-to-one conversation. This is all going to be private to you. You're never going to actually publish this avatar on the web or anything like that. So questions of privacy or copyright are not really an issue here, because you are actually going to be doing this privately. So you're never going to share your avatar with anyone other than perhaps your buddy or mentor in your business. But they will really, really help you to create that perfect customer avatar and understand what they look like. You then got to think about what they need you to do. So it's about finding the pain point or desire that you're satisfying for them. And this is where you start to have to try and get inside the head of your target market, inside the head of this customer avatar. What sort of conversations are they having in their own mind? What's troubling them? What's keeping them awake at night? If you can think through those sorts of things, you're starting to connect with them emotionally, because most people buy from an emotional reaction. They don't buy from logic. There will be some things they'll buy from logic. It's, if it's got to fit a certain size, then if it doesn't fit that size, they won't buy it. But usually people will buy from an emotional perspective, then they will use logic to justify the decision they've made. It's a really common practice for that to happen. I used to work in the project management industry quite a lot, and I often selected software packages, and it was a really difficult discipline to go through and list out all of the criteria that we were going to use to assess a software tool. So we ended up with the tool that best met our requirements, rather than choosing the tool we liked best from the company that we liked best. But quite often I've seen companies do exactly the opposite. They've identified a company they like, a product they like the look of, and then they've tried to use the criteria to justify buying that one instead of another one. It's the wrong way around in reality. But that's how people are. They buy emotionally and they use logic to justify it. So you really got to get inside the head of your target market to think, how are they reacting emotionally? How are they buying emotionally, so that you can connect with them at that level? What sort of end result are they looking to achieve? What's a good outcome from their perspective? How can you help them achieve that? And then you need to think about what in their mind is stopping them from buying something, particularly buying what you're offering. What are the question marks that they're going to have in their mind? Maybe if it's a desirable purchase, they want to buy a new this, that, or the other. Maybe justifying the spend might be a roadblock in their own mind. So how can you actually help them justify to themselves, or possibly to members of their family or friends or their business partner, what they should buy? How can you help them justify it? What reasons can you come up with to help them overcome those roadblocks that are in their mind, saying, I'd really like to buy this, but I'm not sure. Does it do this? Or can I explain it away in this way or whatever? You really need to think those things through. It's specific to your product, it's specific to that market. Different roadblocks might appear in the mind for different people, even though it's the same service. So again, when we go back to the weight loss coach example, you know, the different roadblocks for the overweight man might be, well, I'm not sure I want to go to a weight loss coach in a group, and you know, admit that I can't lose weight, and I might see some other people down there that know me, and not sure if I want to do that. So it might be you're better off selling one-to-one coaching to the overweight man, whereas for mums that want to get back to pre-pregnancy figures, they're quite happy to get together as a group, do this together, get that synergy and get that sort of support from each other, and have a natter and a chat along the way as well. So you've got to think the different roadblocks might occur for different segments, different niches, even if they buy the same service. You've really got to think that through and put yourself into their shoes. And then you've got to come up with that information that you can give to them to overcome those roadblocks. Yeah. How are you going to actually persuade them that you can help them, or this is the right product for them? It does overcome their objections. It does negate the problems that they've got. You can solve the situation. And then this is really, really important. You've got to understand what their biggest fears are. You know, quite often the biggest fear in weight loss might be, I don't actually lose any weight, or even worse, I put a few pounds on, and I've got to go along and admit that I didn't lose any weight, and that I actually, you know, did go out for a big night out and had that burger and chips and 3 pints and what have you. You know, that could be the biggest fear of stopping somebody from coming along to your regular weight loss meetings. All sorts of things like that. What are their fears? How are you going to help them overcome that, those fears, so that they can actually move forward and work with you, buy from you, whether it's a service or a product or whatever. You know, these questions are really, really difficult sometimes to answer. But the more you go through validating these questions, the better your marketing messages will be. You could do market research surveys. You could talk to your existing customers to understand why they bought from you. Whatever you do, though, be wary of making assumptions. You know, and when you talk to people, really dig into the reasons why they do things, because sometimes they're not quite as open as you might think about why they bought something or why they want something. You really need to dig into that background as much as you can. So you're creating this really good picture of what the customer needs you for. And the end result or outcome of that you really want to understand what the client wants to happen at the end. What is the outcome that they want? What do they want to get from it? You know, they've got this target market there, and for me, I'm searching for the people that want more business from LinkedIn. So that's my target market. That's what I'm searching for. So a good place to start with that might be the testimonials you have from your existing clients. What are the outcomes or benefits that they've described to you in those testimonials? Now, a lot of people end up with testimonials or recommendations that don't actually answer those questions, don't actually tell you what they got out of it. So maybe you need to think about how to ask for testimonials in a better way. And it's really, really important that you ask in the right way. So I usually ask for a testimonial or a recommendation by asking 3 questions. What was the problem you wanted to solve? What was it like working with me to solve it? And now that we've solved it, how is it for you? Because that gives me a powerful both a powerful recommendation and gives me some insight into the problems that I'm solving and how I help them get solved. And that helps me understand my avatar better and helps me create better marketing messages for future avatars, for future marketing campaigns. So that's what you really need to think to. think through. What's in the way of them achieving that outcome? What are those roadblocks? So you need to think it through. So here we've got a graduate that desperately wants to get a job. So what's in the way from them wanting to be hired to getting hired? Well, maybe it's that they don't understand how to write a LinkedIn profile that's going to really support them getting a job application. So you need to think through what those steps are to help them get there. And they will often be a whole series of decisions along the way from they see your company, your business, your product, your service. The end of the chain is they buy from you. And there could be a whole series of questions and steps in the middle. And sometimes it's better to start from the buy decision and think to yourself, right, okay, what's the final thing that they're going to decide to do? Question they've answered before they actually buy from me. And it might be, is the price right? Or is the timing right? And then you work backwards from there to answer all of those questions, all of those roadblocks. So you can take them step by step through the process, answering all their objections so that they become a customer at the end of those interactions. So really, it's all about why they need you, what information you can give them to overcome those roadblocks. And you know, if you answer all the questions, you know, you've got all of these roadblocks there, and you have the answers to why you can overcome that roadblock, then you've got some really powerful material there to help you move forward with this potential client. And as I said before, you've got to understand their fears. It's the killer question. And once you understand those fears, you can always, assuming you can address them, you're well on the way to creating a really compelling offer if you can understand how you can address those fears and put it into a compelling marketing message. Now, once you've got this understanding of the customer avatar and you've started to document it, you've started to document the fears and the roadblocks and how you're going to overcome them, the next step is to think about customer empathy and creating a customer empathy map. And this will really take your understanding of the customer and your interaction with them to the next level. But the empathy map really looks at a number of different aspects. There's what the customer sees, there's what the customer hears, and from what they see and what they hear, what do they then start to think and feel? And then what do they say and do? And what they say and do are not always consistent with each other. But all the time they're weighing up the pain or the problem that they're solving and the gain they're going to get. All of this is interacting with them, and you really need to think this through at as deep a level as you can get to make your marketing messages really, really compelling. So what do they see? So they're going to see your marketing messages, they're going to see stuff about your business, but how does that fit with what else they see? What do they read? Where do they watch TV? This is all about getting the message in the right way or on the right channel and thinking about how they react to those things. And you know, the better you understand about how they consume stuff, the more likely you are to be able to get your stuff in front of them for them to be able to consume it in the right way. So you really need to think about where they see things so that you can get what you want them to see in the right place. What do they hear? They will be listening to other people. And you know, we've all come across it in the days when we used to be able to go down the pub. You go down the pub with a bunch of friends and you might be talking about buying something, and everybody's always got an opinion. And they'll all be going, oh, I wouldn't buy one of those. No, I know somebody who bought one and broke down within the first few days, and oh, wouldn't buy one of those. Oh, no. So you know, people will be influenced by all sorts of other factors. They will have things coming in on them, sort of nagging at their ears, the monkey on the shoulder saying, oh, it's a bit expensive, I don't know if I'd buy that, all those sorts of things. Who do they listen to? Where are they getting their information from? Do they listen to other entrepreneurs groups or business groups? Do they listen to podcasts? What radio shows do they listen to? There's all sorts of influences coming in besides what they hear from you. And you've got to think about what those negatives might be. But you also want to make sure that you don't sound like one of the negatives or things that they dislike. So you don't want to be coming across as someone they don't like, because you want them to like you. You want them to trust you. So you've got to think this through really, really careful. It can be really, really hard to put yourself in the shoes of the customer, but it's really important that you do try it. Okay. Next, what do they really think and feel? So they've seen stuff, they've heard stuff. What's that triggering in their minds? What are they really thinking about? What's really underlying it? Are there some hidden prejudices or unconscious biases in there that might be impacting their buying decisions? Have they never liked, if you think about buying a car, some people have an automatic inbuilt rejection of certain brands because they just don't see them as fitting the way they like to be perceived. They want to fit in with the crowd. They don't want to buy that sort of, the old Citroen 2CV is a classic example. Like, oh, I'm not buying a Citroen 2CV. Oh no, who'd buy one of those? Well, yeah, but actually, for the right circumstances, at the right time, the old Citroen 2CV was designed for French farmers, so they could, they could pop a pig in the back of the car, drive it to market, sell it, drive home again without worrying about it getting messy and mucky. It fitted the market. But you wouldn't sell a Citroen 2CV to somebody that wanted to be driven up the Champs-Elysees to a huge public event or something. So it's about what are their prejudices, what are their hopes and aspirations, so getting behind what they really think and feel, and it takes some effort to do this. And then you need to think about what they do and what they say, and realize that actually they don't always do what they say they're going to do. So you quite often, it's happened to me in the past. I've talked to a potential client and everything seems to be going right, and I say, okay, so I'll send you the invoice then. Well, I just need to think it through, and or the classic, I just need to ask my business partner, that sort of thing. And actually they say, oh yeah, I'll sign up for it this afternoon, and they never sign up. All they've done is fobbed you off with an excuse, and there's that false enthusiasm for the product, service, or whatever, and it's really just to close you out because there are objections there that you haven't answered. There are problems there that you haven't identified and you haven't answered in sufficient detail. Maybe you've tried to answer them, but you haven't hit the nail on the head, or stuff like that. So it's those situations where something goes wrong. It's if you can go back to that client and say, look, I know you didn't buy. I'm not coming back to try and persuade you to buy, but what I'd really like to do is understand why you didn't buy, because I've obviously got something wrong and I want to try and fix that going forward. I'm not asking you to buy, but I'm really asking you is to help me if you wouldn't mind. Now that can be, if you can get somebody willing to do that, that can be hugely powerful for making your next sale much more successful. But you really do have to dig into that background there, and we're thinking about that sort of aspect of it. And then step 7 is really taking everything that we've talked about before and pulling it all together into a customer avatar. So this is where you're taking all that research, all that analysis you've done, and you create a sort of mini biography, if you will, of that customer avatar. It's like writing their story, and it's really useful because the most powerful thing to use in marketing are stories. They really are hugely powerful, and when you come to write your marketing pieces, they just become another part of that story. because if you can relate to somebody else's story, you can resonate with them, you can engage with them, you can build on that empathy with them, then they're much more likely to buy. So here's an example of my project management training course avatar. This was for online training for junior project team members that had aspired to become project managers. I got the picture, I've got the description, the story here, and then down at the bottom here, I've got all the roadblocks, all the answers to the roadblocks, where they would get the answers, how I would deliver the answers to the roadblocks to them. And each of these was a little piece of marketing materials that I could use for a post or a tweet or something like that to help build up that trust in what I was trying to sell. And here's another example of, this was where I was trying to sell group training courses for medium-sized businesses, with the HR manager or the training manager being responsible. Again, I've written the story here, I've got it brought to life with the picture, and then I've got my roadblock, the information, and where I get that information from. So I've got all of this material to be able to actually create marketing materials to deliver against what I'm promising to deliver for these clients. So that, in a whistle-stop tour, is every aspect of how to create and build this ideal customer avatar picture, so that you can then, with that picture sat next to your PC or your computer while you're writing your marketing, you can glance across and you can have that one-to-one conversation that I talked about, that Sir Terry Wogan has with his radio show, and that you need to actually replicate for your marketing. So do we have any questions from people after going through all of that? Nobody's put any questions in the chat box, just a couple of messages there. Anybody got any questions? Feel free to come off mute and chip in. Julia?
Not a question, but that was really interesting. Thank you, because I've known about this for a long time, but I've never written it down.
Yep.
So, and that visual thing, especially for someone like me, is really, really strong. Yeah, no, and it's a really good thing. So my client that still hasn't come back to me because he's fannying about because he doesn't know his target audience, I'm going to give him some real good pointers from what I've learned today. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Julia. Now, as I said before, I usually run this session interactively in a room with people, and what I'd normally do is get people to pair up and do a whole series of exercises, and this would be a half-day long workshop. But you know, at the moment, lots of people are still really reluctant to get together. But if there is appetite amongst people, I can either work one-to-one with you or together with a pair of you, or we can get a small group together where we can actually work through and create your customer avatars. So if you message me and ask me about that, we can set something up. In normal times, I'd have run this and I'd have either put it out as a course in the first place, or I'd be offering a course now, but it just doesn't feel right to do that at the moment. But if people want more help, want to get into the detail of doing this, as you say, I've written a number of different customer avatars, and I've written loads more since then. Very happy to sit down with you, work one-to-one with you on doing that. But yeah, message me and let's have a chat about that.
You also included some NLP in there, which was really interesting because I did a whole day's training on that.
Yep. Yeah, I've never been trained on it, but there are some natural things in there as an entrepreneur. I've learned over the years that you really got to get into this, otherwise you don't really get under the skin of the target market.
Really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the transformation in my own marketing materials from when I first started just putting out stuff about my training courses, then after writing the avatar, I really honed those messages down, and they were much more successful once I actually really understood who my target market was. Any other questions from anyone? Just chip in, don't need to raise hands or anything. Claudine.
Yeah, what you have said is what I've always heard.
So why aren't you doing it?
Well, I started to do it with Facebook.
Right.
I tried.
No, you're starting the wrong way, Claudine. Right?
Yeah.
You don't start with the media. You start with who your target market is. Once you understand your target market, then you'll create a message for the right media for that target market.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? Because what I have is for everybody. So there's not.
But that's the point I was making about you need to break it down. Okay, you need to break that market down into different groups, because although you might think everybody could use my service, you've got to break it down and say, right, this week I'm going to target new homeowners, because you're in utility warehouse, much the same as Andy is, and Andrew's in the business side of utilities. You've got to think, okay, let's break that target market down and think, okay, how can I niche them down so I'm really talking to somebody that I can appeal to. And you can't market to everyone at once, because the same message won't appeal to everyone at once. And if you try and create a message that appeals to loads of people, you'll end up with such a watered down message that it appeals to no one.
Okay.
That's why you really have to niche down. So when you're writing a marketing message, it's got to be different to the people you're offering to reduce their utility bills. It's a different message to the message to saying to somebody, do you want a side income by becoming part of Utility Warehouse partnership with me? Yeah, because it's two totally different markets.
Yep.
Totally different messages. You've got to really niche it down, otherwise you'll get it wrong and it won't appeal to anybody.
So basically, if I say break it down weekly, 1 week partners, the other week customers, but also break it in groups.
Yeah, it's different campaigns, and run different campaigns targeted at different people, and they might be on different platforms completely. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to say thank you, Alan. We chatted briefly yesterday about utility warehouse offerings, and yes, I think all of us in UW make the mistake of saying we have fantastic services. Here they are. We've got and to be honest with you, I think it was far easier when I first started, when we just had 2 services. And today, with 7 services and the business opportunity, we try and get the message to everybody in the same way and say, as you said right at the very beginning, here's what we do, make a decision. What do you want? Do you want to make money or save money? Or if you want to save money, what do you want to save money on? So to a certain extent, we have to make a decision for those people and just give them one option, and see how it goes. Well, that was fascinating. Thank you.
That's a pleasure. Any other questions I can answer for people?
Alan, I put one in, and thank you, by the way. It's really good to see you again. I put a question in the chat there. I've got 4 avatars that I've worked out where I think my niches work. And at the moment, I thought I'll just focus on 1 a month and do it that way. Should I be focusing on it for a longer length of time and maybe do a couple of avatars? Or am I doing it one step at a time?
Right, it depends on the avatars really, because you've got to think about their buying cycle and how much time are you going to need to build the trust with that avatar. So if the buying cycle for them from first hearing about your product to being in a position where they're going to be ready to buy is a couple of weeks, then you can do a campaign that takes them through the whole buying cycle in that couple of weeks, and boom, done, Bob's your uncle. And that's great. But if their decision process is going to be 3 months, then you've got to make sure your marketing campaign keeps drip feeding stuff to them for 3 months. Otherwise, it won't. You'll cut out halfway through, so to speak. Yeah. This goes back to the previous webinar where I talked about the LinkedIn ladder of awareness and taking people through the various steps to get into being ready to buy from you. And you know, sometimes it's just about, you know, people buy services on a one-off basis. So, for example, one of my clients is a dispute, resolves disputes. She's a mediator. And, you know, they don't have people needing a mediator don't have a buying cycle. They either have a problem that needs mediating or they don't. So she has to drip feed to her target markets all the time to remind them, I'm here. If you need a problem, if you've got a problem, I'm here. I'm here. So it's a totally different marketing approach again.
Yeah.
But because she understands her customer avatars, she knows that, and so she actually creates marketing that fits that genre. She doesn't have to take people through a staged and step process.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you very much for that.
That's okay. That's okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming along and listening to me drone on for a while about customer avatars. As you can tell, I get very passionate about them. I'm very passionate about the marketing. As I said before, if anyone wants to work either with me one-to-one or in small groups, do message me and we can set something up. And then I will put a recording out of this so you can watch the recording from my YouTube channel, and I will message you with a link to the recording. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week and see you all soon. Bye for now.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Bye.
Very useful.
Bye.
Bye.